最果てのストーリー抱いてあてもなくさまよい続けた滲んだ New World It's only just begun 今始まりの This is where tomorrow brings a new game It's time to learn the pain is gain Ready for it
Alrighty, hello everybody, and welcome back to the Winter Ultimania Grand Slam 2025. No rest for the weary, we're jumping right on into the finals Mappool showcase. As always, my name is Sparky, and I am joined in the commentary booth this time by Pataraj. Pat, how you doing?
Yo, I'm kinda sleepy. They're not letting me sleep here. It's almost midnight.
Almost, but it was already past midnight.
No, it's not past midnight. It's like 11 p.m. or so.
Nice.
But yeah, it's like getting late, and I do have to work tomorrow. So yeah, we'll get this going somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll try and keep this as long as humanly possible for your sake. We'll make sure we take as long as humanly possible. But no, all joking aside, we can go ahead and without further ado, we can get on into what'll be the first rice map of the showcase. and it's gonna be
No way! I didn't even remember the title of the song. It was. I mean, this is my stage right now.
Yeah, this man can't sleep, and we're going to get into I Can't Sleep 2. It was so good they had to make it twice. And this is going to be what has been historically been actually, I think we're expanding the map pool this time around. I actually do have some map information because I got eliminated last week, so I can actually know what we're in for now. This is a bit of a stamina pick based on how things are organized here. clocking in at just shy of 4 minutes. So you have a stamina pick and what is essentially going to be a boss pick as well inside of the rice pool. We are expanding to 8 rice shards. We are now in a best of 13 format.
Yeah, and we also add on a 5th LN shard. So we do have 5 LNs to provide to you and still 3 hybrids. And this first rice is gonna be pretty interesting. I wanna say like 224 BPM in a 5-digit tournament. And also with that kind of patterning, it's like broken jump stream and so on, it's like really hard to nail.
Yeah, the precision element going to be really put to the test here. I mean, with the 6 players that are left, they definitely have it within themselves to pull off some pretty insane scores. In fact, we might actually start reaching the point of some of these players just play this BPM, around this BPM range, jump streams type picks just for fun. So I'm interested to see how they stack up on this. You get a nice little break in the middle to take a nice, long, hard look at your opponent's score, realize what position you're in going into this back half, because you get a pretty decent amount of time to look at it, and you dive right back on into it.
Yeah, I just noticed that the background image is a liquor store. Some people might need some liquor, so you might want to look into the background to get some before playing this map. It might not help in terms of accuracy. I've tried playing Osu Drunk before, and getting good ac is like not really an easy thing.
Yeah, it's pretty hard, and I imagine inebriated doesn't make it any better. But this back half starts to introduce little tidbits of just pure hand stream. You start to get these 3 column chords coming down with pretty decent regularity to kind of intersperse, break up some of the lighter jump stream we had to deal with. So the density does increase as we get into this kind of single notes broken stream section before, again, diving right back on into. You get very little breathing room on a pick like this.
Yeah, it's like not a straightforward jump stream pick. Like when I was playtesting this, I found that the hand stream section really wore me down in terms of stamina, and like the broken jump stream and broken hand stream here really kind of broke my flow. Like usually when it's like sustained, either hand stream or jump stream, you kind of tend to kind of adopt a flow. Like here, you can adopt a flow sort of, but like the hand stream patterning is like also really hard to sustain because of the trilliness incurred by the hand streams.
Yeah, I think that'll be the real breaking point for some players, because you kind of almost wish it were just all 1/4 hand stream. The fact that you have those gaps forces you to really hyper focus on those individual gaps to make sure that you're not overhitting where you're not supposed to. But that will do it for our first rice pick. We can move on to rice 2. And it will be a bit of a mixed speed pick. It's going to be on to me.
Yeah, Zay is an old school name. Some people might know this name, some other people might not know this name. But I believe Zay has been featured in MWC, like as a kind of old school technical pick as well. And here's gonna be pretty dumpy. And Rice 2 has been pretty dumpy these past few rounds, and this is no exception.
Yeah, Zay really has a knack for finding these really interesting music choices to put their spin on, and this one no real exception. If you're familiar with Zay's mapping, this really shouldn't come as too much of a surprise as to what you are seeing. Some real interpretive, some folks might just call it dump patterning, where you have these like aggressive like staircase streams with like flams and grace notes all over the place. Every like buzz has like 3 or 4 notes associated with it as you continue on. There are some steadier sections where it's just like straightforward 1/4 like jump, but then you get like these 1/8 transitions, 1/6 transitions at times as well. So you're constantly having to adjust to different like BPM ranges, despite the normalized BPM being only 80 at the end of the day.
Yeah, here we get some gnarly bests and some really repetitive patterns that might incur some mind blocks. So kind of be careful. Kind of have to be careful about this kind of section. Do not want to be taken by surprise here, just getting into it and just realizing that, oh, how do I play this pattern? And that's the ending of it. It's not really a long chart at all. 1 minute and 45 seconds.
Yeah, basically quick in, quick out, and we can move on to Rice 3, the first of a couple of mixed oriented different stylizations of tech, and it's gonna be Great Fury of Heaven. We're seeing Great Fury of Heaven in a 5-digit tournament.
Yeah, it is Vortex's Great Fury of Heaven, sung by Frums, none other by Frums. And yeah, like the song choice register has been like really kind of avant-garde, I want to say, throughout these 3 first Rices. So it's like pretty interesting. I believe Logan has been trying to put this this map in consecutive tournaments over and over, and he has finally succeeded.
It's a pretty fitting map for a finals level map pool. It definitely has some very interesting patterns. I'm trying to remember what the map overall looked like, because it was used a couple years ago in was it one of the soft tournaments or World Cup? I can't, like the exact tournament escapes me. I know it's been used in open ranked tournaments before, many years ago at this point, and it is a very polyrhythmic style of chart, as you would come to imagine from a Frums song. Not as polyrhythmic as maybe like 2L, but definitely has its moments, and the fact that you're having to handle all of these different pattern structures, not like straightforward 1/4, despite it looking like it, having to deal with these like syncopated rhythms at basically all times on a pick like this can really wear you down if you aren't too careful.
Yeah, like if we compare it to last week's Rise number 3, We Own the Night by Pizza. This one is like really way less straightforward. It is kind of more comparable to something like Viscracked from like 2 weeks ago. And Viscracked, I want to say, is like a little bit more technical, but this one is also pretty technical. I don't really know. I don't really have a good feel as to which one is like the most technical. I want to say Viscracked is most technical, but this one is like leaning more on the physical side, but it is also technical, so it is definitely the harder between We Own the Night and this. That's what we concluded in playtesting.
Yeah, so a good way to start off these mixed tech picks. We can move on to the next one here. I think this is another. I didn't mention it. I think the first pick, the stamina pick, was a custom by Crustbell, and now we have, I believe, a custom by Alexire.
Yeah, this one, I believe Exire had this done, I think in advance for another tournament, but kind of recycled this for this tournament. And this one is like really pretty, and it does not, I guess it does not break the streak of conceptual avant-garde song choice, because like this one is like really vibey. I think like the song choice in this Mappool is kind of an experience in itself, but here, for the pick itself, it's like very technical, very mini jacky, very bursty, and I guess very tech core.
Yeah, I feel like those that have been around for a while might say like FFR core, where if you've played FFR before, you kind of know what you're getting yourself into going into a map like this. And like you mentioned, we go from Great Fury being like this like stream-ish oriented type of tech pick to a more like Jack-centric style of tech pick where you do have some elements borrowing from each other on both maps, but there's a very clear focus as to what the main element of the map is supposed to be. And with this one, you have these like anchored patterns, these implied mini jacks just straight on like core jack oriented patterns, some grace notes, some flams, just for good measure on the transitions and the bursts. But yeah,
Yeah, in terms of sound, like this is very very snap. Like every single note will correspond to a sound. So not really a dump structure at all. It's like very breakcore, very breakcore coded, very FFR core, as you say.
yeah, and basically first two of these mixed tech picks gives you something to latch onto. Some might want to trend towards something like Great Fury of Heaven where they're more stream oriented. If they don't want to deal with that type of pick, they can go for something like Somni Discotheque. And we have one more to go for. If neither of them appease you, we have what'll be Rice 5.
Drumroll. Oh, oh, this one. I love this one. This one is like I think I found this one while looking at Mystic Eyes' maps one day, and I played this not knowing what I was going into, and when I was going out of the map, I told myself this is the greatest map of all time. And I think it downright led to me suggesting the MWC pulling team to get Mystic Eyes in the team, and in turn, I think like this map is straight up responsible for us getting the Mystic Eyes Tech qualifier in 2024, as well as a beautiful technical map in round 32. This is Sky Shards, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, starting off with this very single note stream oriented introduction before diving on into what is going to transition into basically broken up bursts that are accentuated by either quick mini jacks or just straight up one hand double stop jacks back and forth. I mean, typical tech stylings where you have like a smattering of flams and grace notes. Of course, you're gonna have stuff like that on a more technical oriented pick, but the way Mystic Eyes does it, they just have a way of really pushing the envelope sometimes as to what they can get away with to push the comfort levels of players when they do design some of these more intricate burst sections.
Yeah, like as you can see, like this key eye section is kind of a mix of really bursty, snappy kind of tech, but also very interpretative, almost dumpy like sections, like a mix of a dump and a FFR core pick. It's like very, very unique as a pick. And
it kind of does a good job of like blending together elements of what we saw in like Great Fury and then Somni Discotheque earlier, where if you didn't like the streams of one or you didn't like the jack oriented sections of the other, why not just put them both together? You get the best of both worlds. And as we continue on here through this outro, it just does not stop once it begins to really pick up. The density doesn't really play that much of a factor. You don't have this like really crazy like 3-note quad jack oriented patterns, but the little jumps here and there that are just littered throughout, forcing you to avoid bottoming out at basically all times on this pick, is going to lead to some pretty interesting back and forth. I can see some pretty nasty exchanges going on a pick like this.
Yeah, I think like the first half is going to be dedicated to building of accuracy, and like the second half is going to be a battle, like a battle of attrition. The second half is like really, really stamina draining.
But we can move on to Rice 6 here. Is going to be I think there's another potential custom here
Yeah, this is
from these
another
guys.
custom. Yeah, this is another custom from these guys, and this almost could belong to the Toho tournament. I think this
Uh,
might be Toho Core
I'm sure
by
somebody's gonna
coincidence.
appreciate that. But moving on into this is still in the realm of like mixed rice tech oriented picks. Maybe not full on like what you would consider quote unquote a tech pick. Focuses more heavily on uh like chord jack, mini jack patterning without being like a full dedicated chord jack pick because that's still to come. That's actually the pick right after this, if I'm looking at the notes right. So going on into this, we ramp up the BPM to 151 and we're playing these chord jack structures at this BPM. We really do start to see players fall off a cliff in terms of overall comfort levels. It's still two note chords with a lot of mini jacks in between, so might be manageable and it doesn't go on for the longest stretches of time, but when they do come through, if you transition to it awkwardly or if you don't have the cleanest entrance into it, you could find yourself just spilling 200s all over the place.
Yeah, I feel like the difficulty of this map's like really transitional, especially. On the one hand, you have to sustain the 151 BPM mini jack tech here, and the bursts are pretty easy to nail on their own right, like individually. But when you compound them with the 151 mini jack, like you have to have a specific posture to tackle this map, especially like given that it has all of this guy's very typical, very it has. What I want to say is like it has Disguise's personality written all over the map.
Yeah, and it'll be a very interesting pick to see players contest on. We can move on to Rice 7. It is going to be none other than
The Core Jack, and what is the Core Jack? It's gonna be a Monheim map by the name of Lost Umbrella. And we clock in at 137 BPM. Like we were coming from 125, and the scores that we saw in the semifinals were really high, were perhaps too high to our comfort. So I guess we're ramping this up. We'll get to see where the limit is. We hope not. We hope not too many players are gonna get some 997s or 998s again.
yeah, we're in finals. We want to see players struggle a little bit, just a little bit. Like just stop getting 990s. Stop that. Get some help. But as we move on into this, I mean, stop us if you've heard Monheim before associated with a chord jack pick. It is very prototypical chord jack fare. It is. I always like to say higher BPM, lower density. No, this is pretty dense for the BPM range that it is at. This is going to just be miserable to play through for some of the players left in this tournament. I would like to hope. I've been proven wrong before with chord jack picks. Players seem to love high BPM chord jack picks, so I say we want people to struggle. We're probably still going to see somebody swing a 990k on this.
Yeah, like granted, this is 151 BPM, and like the style of Monheim chord jacks is pretty ergonomic in terms of like chord jack. Average, I guess. Like the type of chord jacks that people who are good at chord jacks play is like really, really dense and almost kind of monkey-like. And this one is like a little bit less stupid, if I want to say, if I want to put it in the blunt way.
What is it? It's not just like pure quads into like single note where you can kind of just like autopilot it. You actually have to think through some of those pattern transitions at times. But I mean, it's another pretty quick in, quick out type of a pick, just shy of 2 minutes. And we can move on to the final Rice pick in this pool, the boss pick. And who better to coin the term boss pick to than an evening pick?
Yeah, like when we were at Sky Shards, I almost said that Sky Shards was the best map of the pool. No, Vibrant is the best map of the pool and is perhaps the best map of Osumania 4K.
Yeah, Evening needs no introductions. Their reputation precedes them. They have been known to make some pretty wild picks or wild maps. And this one, no different. Of course, it being the boss pick, a little bit longer than the other rice picks in this pool. Fortunately, not longer than the tiebreaker. So there is definitely a map longer than this in the pool. You just have to kind of work to get to it. And as we get this map underway, it is combining elements of everything we have seen in the map pool thus far. It's every superlative you can throw at a longer technical pick where you just have these transitional moments. It's a little bit more telegraphed, dare I say, than Synaptic Plasticity from last round, where with Synaptic, the music kind of lends itself to some of the sporadic natures of it, but with Quan Sound, you kind of have this like formulaic structure to kind of go down, and it can kind of lead you to what you're about to play at any given time, and we can kind of see it reflected in the mapping here.
Yeah, if I may introduce this map in like a holistic way, it's like a really progressive map. So the beginning is like nothing too special. It's like really a focus of accuracy, especially like with those elements. There are not that many elements in the map, so like in the grand scheme of things, like this map is like almost 5.5 minutes long. So you have a lot of rice to catch up those pesky 200s that you may catch on the Ellen releases, but it starts off really easy. But as the map goes on, it like ramps up the intensity of the patterns. Like here, the bursts are become really tight and gets harder and harder to hack, and the ending goes into a really intense physical showdown. So I feel like the ending is where a lot of points might come to go from one side to the other depending on people's physicality.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like in the last match that we saw to round out this weekend, there was a pretty good way of describing these boss picks so far, where you put in the work in the first half of the map to kind of set yourself up for the back half, because you know that it's going to get progressively harder. The patterns are going to get a little denser, a little more awkward to read through, and ensuring that you have as high of an accuracy as possible, and hopefully maybe an FC to go along with it, can ensure that you're able to withstand any potential drops, because there are some really intricate bursts to read through as we make our way into this back half. Some one-hand trills transitioning into two-hand trills, and we've seen some pretty wild swings when we do have very trilly maps begin to make their introduction. I mean, like I said, this last match literally had a point decided on transitions out of trills, so definitely don't discount putting or trying to sharpshoot that intro to ensure that you have a good platform to stand on going into this back half.
Yeah, like this break section was really really challenging to control, and here we go into the more physical part of the map where the music really picks up, and in turn the bursts are also going to pick up, and also the stream dynamic is going to ramp up to basically its apex. And here we've got what I like to call the X patterns of the map.
Yeah, it's like 1, 3, 2, 4 transitional jumps inside of the jump stream you have. And it's not just like all straightforward like 1/4. You can't read this like a traditional jump stream pick. When you hear the music begin to kind of speed up ever so slightly with those little musical motifs sliding through. You're starting to peak at these bursts, reaching like 275, 300 BPM, depending on the snaps that you're having to play through, and you start to get introduced to some really quick mini jacks right out of these hand stream patterns as well. Again, you run into a situation where you got to avoid bottoming out the keys. Those are some really nasty mini jack transitions to read through, and like you mentioned, that ending is going to be really where the fruits of the previous 5 minutes come to fruition.
Yeah, it's sort of like a cushion for the damage control you have to manage in this gnarly ending. Like I want to call those mini jacks like almost reverse shields, but there are no LNs to speak of. But speaking of LNs, we are going into wait, are
Yes,
the LNs
LN1?
first or yeah, the LNs are first and then the hybrids are gonna come. Okay, so LN1 is gonna be something that people might know very well. It's gonna be Undercover Martin, which was used in, I believe, MWC 2021 or 2. It's kind of a coin flip in my head, but it was in quarterfinals.
Yeah, it's gonna be focusing on the release element, and as we get this map underway, we can already see it's not. If there is interpretive rice patterning, this is very interpretive LN patterning, where you have these staggered start stops to some of these LN structures, and we transition on into the main chorus where, sure, the starts become a little bit more coordinated, but the releases are still on this like 1/4 grid that you're hanging the LNs on. There isn't really like a rice node or like another LN to kind of coordinate where your releases are supposed to go. So if you're not the most comfortable with this like hanging LN style, might want to stay away from this style of pick. But if you're really good at releases, this might be an instant protect.
Yeah, honestly, we are getting into the big boy LN picks. Like the LN difficulty has been ramping up from quarterfinals to this. Like we go straight from quote unquote MWC round of 64, almost round of 128 to almost like round of 16 quarterfinals level sort of thing. So yeah, the remaining players in the finals phase are really some big boys.
Yeah, with this pick, it really doesn't pull any punches. You have this like pseudo breakdown section where you have these longer LN anchors with the rice interspersed in between. Kind of hybrid-esque, but still focusing the main elements on the LNs. These impact 3-note chords with staggered staircase releases. Very hard to coordinate at times. You can find yourself just letting go ever so slightly too late on some of those first ones to try and get that hanging ending release. And I mean, just keeping the 200 counts of a map like this under as much control as possible is going to be the task as we make our way to this outro. It doesn't give you any room to breathe, as well as you have that wild ending into it just suddenly stopping.
Yeah, honestly, like the ending, the second half with those shields and so on might also be the places where a lot of points might switch to the other side.
Absolutely. So we can move on to LN2 here.
LN number 2. Yeah, so a very old school core name by the name of Lovelin. And some people might laugh at the star rating, but I assure you this is overrated.
Yeah, I mean, LN star rating can kind of just go out the window after a certain point. It's really just because of the fact that you have these like pseudo inverse E sections that kind of inflate the star rating. If you throw in some shields afterwards, it really does a number to star rating calculations. So this is gonna be a bit of a it's coined as a mixed speed type of a pick, and it definitely is a fair bit faster with the overall BPM. Some folks might just say this is a density pick, but I think there's still a full like dedicated density pick left in the LN pool. I mean, we are increasing it to 5, so gotta add some extra things in there. So think of it like a mixed style of pick as we get through that introduction, and plenty of combo to work with through the first quarter alone, already crossing that 1,000 mark. So recovery from misses in the intro might be a little smoother than in maps prior. So wouldn't be surprised to see some recovery runs starting early and being able to successfully start chipping away at scores.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the dynamics of this map because, as you say, 165 BPMs, definitely lower than some picks in the semifinals phase. So 165 BPM is also slow enough that it does require a fair amount of coordination to handle this pick, especially since some of those sections do go into quote-unquote slow LN coordination. But like the speedy part is gonna be especially centered towards the vocal LN dump sections that some people might already be familiar from the ranked section, and those vocal dumps, those vocal LN dumps in turn do inflate the star rating. So if you were wondering why, that's the reason.
Yeah. And really these like chorus sections, these like these key sections really do increase the overall density of the map, but if you're able to read through some of those LN walls that begin to rain down and maintain some semblance of accuracy, you probably fare pretty well. What makes these so hard is the fact that it's not just like a strict 1/4 grid to read through. The fact that you're starting some of those intros with anchors on the other columns releasing earlier than you're intending to is going to be something to avoid as you make your way through this outro and through any of those sections where it really does pick up in density. The breaks in between are going to be times to be able to rebuild any potential score loss. So a nice little 180 in comparison to Undercover Martin, and we can move on to LN3 here.
Yeah, shoutouts to Dreamcatcher, by the way. LN3 is gonna be another shot in the past in terms of mapper. It's gonna be UJ-chan, also known as Underjoy. Underjoy, a very good cosplayer, if I do say so. You can catch Underjoy's cosplays on the Twitters if you are interested. But what else has Underjoy cooked for us in the past is an old school LN here by the name of Dreamin'. It's gonna be 156 BPM, so pretty close to LN number 2, but it's gonna be pretty different in terms of orientation. It's gonna be a lot more coordination oriented.
Yeah, this has like shades of the one Intelizer map we had back in round of 32, where it's very like 1-2 impact chord oriented. You have these like really long LN anchors with basically like 1-2 things to do on the other columns, and it's really just coordinating those impacts, not letting your fingers get too bottomed out when trying to read through them. Transition into a bit of a more dense section afterwards through that introduction, but this one very much based on that like 1-4 1-2 release structure, so coordinating the releases isn't going to be as hard as something like Undercover Martin, where you have like seemingly random release timings. This is all once you get started, once you lock into the BPM, making your way through those sections isn't going to be as mentally demanding when trying to read through those harder sections.
What's going to be demanding, though, it's the length of the pick itself. 3 minutes and 47 seconds is definitely a lot longer than your average map, average non-tiebreaker map, that is, and non-bus map, that is. The other thing also is to notice is that this map is OD8, so the fact that this map's snaps are pretty easy to understand is definitely helpful in trying to understand the release elements of this map, but you do still have to understand, like, oh my god, this inverse section just goes on. Jeez. And yeah, you do have to nail those LN gaps properly, more so than with OD7.
Yeah, I mean, mercifully, if you can read stuff like what we just saw, it's all still 1/4 base. Like those timings aren't any different than what we have been seeing. So if you can navigate those gaps effectively, it shouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Like this is essentially what we just saw, except the fact that the longer LNs aren't stretching further than what some folks would consider comfortable. And it continues on. It's just a trimmed down version of that LN inverse section from earlier. So if you can handle these sections, maybe go back and practice those longer ones, and you'll find that it's really not that much different. So this might be a contentious pick at the end of the day. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw it catch a couple of bans here and there, but some players left might really want to gravitate towards it.
Yeah, like as with any ban-worthy pick, it is also potentially worthy of a protect. I do want to remind you of that.
Mhm. Absolutely. So, with that being said, we can move on to our first real wildcardy LN. It is going to be LN4, and it is going to be Achination.
Where are we stopping with the old school LN mappers? We started, wait.
We've had Underjoy, we've had Chris Arlene, we've had Loveland. Like, we've literally had every old school LN name that everybody should basically know at this point.
But I don't think we can go much further than Peritom, really. Like, Peritom is like even an older name than Intelizer. So if we had an Intelizer map just before this one, this entire pool would have been really old school. But yeah, this is a pretty old school pick. But considering the BPM of it, 185 is going to be veering towards the faster elements of this LN Mappool. Some of the mini jacks you might want to look out after. Like the difficulty is especially transitional. Like they're pretty isolated, but transitioning from those mini jacks into full LN picks is kind of tricky.
Yeah, you have these sections where it's essentially just straight up jump stream with some LNs interspersed in between. And that's really where we might see some players falter, where they kind of overthink where the release timings of those LMs are, and that's where you really start to run into issues. And then you have stuff like this where it's like really rigid 3-note, 4-note like LN walls coming down at times. And I mean, old school LN charts really didn't pull any punches with what they wanted you to do with regards to like pattern comfort. It's just, if it sounds like it needs more LNs, it's going to give you more LNs, and that is no exception here.
Yeah, honestly, you mentioned this one being a wildcard. I feel like every single LN pick has kind of a wildcardy
Yeah.
element to it. Like every LN map's like, as long as it's different from the other, you know.
Pretty much. Like it's hard to categorize our lens because they all borrow so many elements from each other. It's kind of like with the tech picks in the rice pool, where it's like, oh yeah, this is this style of like tech, this is that style of tech. We kind of get the same thing with the LNs, but they all have their own little wrinkles here and there. And speaking of wrinkles, we can move on to LN5.
Yes, we have 5 elements, and the last one might be the freakiest.
Yeah, Lemon Guy LN, the second scariest thing outside of Lemon Guy hybrids, but this one definitely pretty hard in its own right.
Yeah, this one is like really funky in all senses of the term. It's like you may have noticed, like right down from the quarterfinals or the semifinals, I want to say like from the quarterfinals even, that some of the Yellen picks might be almost hybridy in nature. Like this one is like still very LN oriented, but some of those technical transitions, some of those trills might be a bit difficult for people who are not too versed with the technical aspect of Rise to handle. Oh my god, those transitions are like so evil. Like I dub Lemon Guy as the most evil mapper in history, and yeah, this is the incarnation of Lemon Guy's mind.
Yeah, they have a propensity to not really care about player comfort whenever they map things, and those last couple of sections, the transition into that Ki, and even when you're in that Ki, having to deal with like those little interspersed, like quick jack patterns in between, and the buildups as well, having just a slew of things to contend with before diving back into the more coordinated sections is gonna be something to watch out for. It's definitely a bit of a step up from what we have seen so far in its own right. Like, this is probably the most physically demanding of the 5 LN charts, just based on the fact that you're having to deal with so much in between the LNs you're having to play.
Yeah, some of those mini jacks also that you just saw. Again, I think like a lot of the difficulty of this map is transitional. And I think Mejiroshi in the semi-finals Mappool was also very transitional. Also provided this transitional difficulty. This just amps it up to 11.
Absolutely. A pretty good step up from Mejirushi from last round. But we can move on to the hybrids. Keeping it at 3 this time around. Not going to change that number. This is going to be Etude. We get into T-Deck.
Another old school name. Like all of those mapper names really bring me back to the times where map pooling was a little bit simpler. And it is kind of also the mantra of this entire tournament, really. Behind the scenes, that's what we gathered. Also, Etude, some people might know this from one or the other NWC. I want to say this is also NWC 2021 or 2020 even. I don't even remember.
Sounds about right around that area. This is going to be more Rice focused. It's very intricate in its individual sections. It feels like it has its moments of like, okay, you have your Ellen part, you have your Rice part, and then you have the transitional moments. It's just typical hybrid stylized mapping, and it just it just takes it up a notch from where it was last round.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when you mentioned that, because like the separation between Ellen parts and Rice parts, it's really polished in nature for hybrids. I feel like Eclipse also does this thing where one part is like very Rice oriented, and like the other part is like really Ellen oriented, and it's like no, there's like less really hybrid compounded parts.
Yeah, and as we continue on here, I mean, in its own right, when you do get into those individual sections, you know you're in for quite a bit of a ride if you're not too careful. And it's just a matter of trying to stave off any potential breaks in between. You get into a bit more of a dedicated LN section, basically coordination with a little bit of density as well. Gotta watch those releases at times, but able to read through it, some anchors on the outer columns as well. And I feel like this is a pretty friendly introduction, as friendly as it can get for a finals level hybrid here.
Yeah, honestly, a pretty interesting pick considering the other hybrids. Speaking of the other hybrids in question.
Yes, we can move on to hybrid 2. Give me your favorite sidekick, and it's uprated 1.05.
Yeah, brought to you none other by Alex Dunk. Shout out to the real general, by the way. It's going to be your favorite sidekick. So it's going to be a little bit more of a, I want to say a conventional hybrid. It's definitely the most conventional hybrid between the three of them.
Like, it's like you played through this and it's like, yes, okay. This you don't want to compartmentalize it too much. It just has a little bit of both. It's equally as mean, and on the label says it's more LN focused. We can already see much more complex LN stylings coming through here. Staggered starts, staggered releases. I always like to go back to that 1/4 grid because I feel like a lot of players are very comfortable with straightforward 1/4 releases. This one doesn't have that. This is very much Flam Grace Note heavy on that aspect, and having to deal with the other columns being inundated with things to do as well. Just these like one-handed like trill patterns and little jump stream-esque sections as well, just kind of giving it a little bit of flair as we continue on into the back half here.
Yeah, I think like this is pretty it's pretty representative of what Alex Dunk has to provide to the hybrid category. It's like a pretty technical in nature, and I do feel like the hybrid category in itself is like pretty technical in nature. It should be the least technical of the three hybrids. This one is be pretty technical, but perhaps now I think hybrid 3 might be a bit more straightforward in snapping, but still pretty technical in some other ways. You'll see. But this one does provide a fair amount of physicality as well as also LN intensity. It is 189 BPM, so it is also adding to the quote-unquote LN density aspect of the map pool.
Absolutely. So something to kind of sink your teeth into if you're looking for a kind of like not fully dedicating to the LN pool, but you wanted to play something with a lot of LN in it to make your opponent uncomfortable. This is a pretty good option to go into. And with that being said, we only have one map left before the tiebreaker. It is going to be Hybrid 3, and Hybrid 3 is going to be
Terrifying. Yeah, Hybrid 3 is going to be terrifying. Wow, beautiful background brought to you by none other than Polytetrol. Shoutouts to Polytetrol. So the map itself brought to you none other by Arcat with featuring myself on the SVs. So long story short, I cooked up a lot more SVs on this map prior to nerfing it. I basically sprinkled SVs on the entire map, and then Logan told me, no, this is unplayable. So I could just kind of tone it down to this.
Yeah, it's definitely a step up from last weekend's Hybrid 3, where it was... We're starting to approach a territory where it's like, it's still a hybrid map, but the SV is like, okay, we associate hybrids. Okay, it's a mix of Ellen and Rice. I mean, it's still a hybrid. You're just adding SV to it now.
Yeah, like speaking of the pick itself in terms of like NSV aspect, like this is probably the most jacky hybrid of the three. In terms of LNs, like pretty simplistic, but some of the snappings is also very interpretative. I noticed while editing the SVs, and also like the kind of slow jam elements to the releases might kind of induce you into dropping some 200s, and like this stutter section is also can also be pretty accuracy draining before going into the Ki. Very mini jack also.
Yeah, the fact that, I mean, one-handed jack patterns where it's like 1, 2, or 3, 4 impacts are fine, but the fact that there's so many split jacks where it's like 1, 4, 1, 3, 2, 4, those are the ones where I feel like players strain just that little bit more. We'll start to see like players flamming them out of habit as they transition in and out of some of these sections. The fact that you're sprinkling the SV on top of it to add a bit of like an anticipation factor as well, where you're kind of like second guessing yourself where the impacts are going to be. This is a pretty brutal pick to go into blind, and by golly, our players going to go into this blind, and it's going to be funny as hell. Once again, huge thank you to Polly, Arcat, and yourself. I imagine if there's anybody I'm missing, you can feel free to correct me at any time, but this background is beautiful. But with that being said, there's only one map left in the map pool. It is going to be the tiebreaker for the finals, and it is going to be Tenshi no Kikyu featuring Lahi.
Yeah, it's gonna be bringing a Flappy Bakuse as a mapper into the realm here. 6 minutes and 50 seconds for a tiebreaker. That is probably one of the longest tiebreakers we've had in this tournament. And so we saw some tiebreakers in semifinals. Dare I say, we just saw one before this showcase. If some more players dare enter the tiebreaker realm, this is what they may be playing.
Absolutely.
I have never seen this map, so I'm going to it just blind.
Well, we have a pretty calm start here to kick things off. It's gonna give us plenty of time to really let the moment sink in. How did we get here? It is, as I mentioned before, a best of 13 format now, where we'll have played 12 maps leading up to this. And I mean, at this point, if you're not feeling tired by the end of that many maps, given how hard these maps are now, I mean, hats off to you. You probably deserve to make it to grand finals, but this will be the roadblock, hopefully, to really separate who will make it to that final at the end of the day. And very long preamble, basically a quarter of the map dedicated just to getting above that 400 combo cap. You get into this Ki, very LN heavy. You have the mini jacks interspersed in between. Not much different than what we have been seeing in terms of like pattern rigidity, but you have these bursts in between, and trying to coordinate the transitional moments, as we always say with either tiebreakers or like hybrid-esque style charts, is going to be the name of the game. Being able to withstand the moments in between what you're comfortable with is going to be of the utmost importance as we continue on into this next drop.
Yeah, like I feel like we really start to get into the kind of typical quote-unquote tiebreakers. Like you see a lot of mini jack transitions, and because like this is 180 BPM, some picks in the main staple might be a little bit faster, but 180 BPM, like consistent 180 BPM, and also implied mini jacks with some of those patterns, really do put a lot of strain on your hands, especially since you just played, I want to say 12 maps before? Yeah,
Yes.
12 maps before. It is best of 13.
Yeah, a lot of very intense one-handed moments throughout that
Dorito
last
pattern.
section.
Dorito pattern!
Gotta love these structures as we continue on. It's just more of a build-up. Like, you want to get started in these sections. It's just weathering the storm, very Greystone, very flam heavy, and the fact that those are really, really short LNs as well. The propensity to want to crush them or overhold some of them because of the fact that you're trying to respect the LN length could be to your detriment. You could find yourself dropping a couple of 200s, maybe even a miss if you overthink it a little too much. But you do get a pretty decent break here where everything dials down just a little bit, of chance to maybe compose yourself a little bit as you continue on. There's still plenty of map left here as we make our way.
Yeah, speaking of breaks, did you see like the moment where the background suddenly became bright again? That's the moment where the leaderboard would show up for both of the players, and where they would be subjected to see if they're winning or not. Which is
Yeah.
kind of nerve-wracking coming into this very calm section. So, dare I remind you, this is 6 minutes and 50 seconds, but it has a fair amount of downtime. Like, you've noticed this really long intro and like this break also. So the actual quote-unquote drain time, as known as the actual physically draining parts, are not that substantial compared to other tiebreakers.
Yeah, but when you do actually dive into the real meat of the chart, it is quite a bit of a ride. That is a massive LN transition into the last quarter of the map, getting into what is essentially just more coordinated LNs, very friendly release timings, a lot of anchored LNs where you can find your kind of stopping point at any given time. But at this point, it's like you're kind of running on fumes a little bit as we continue on into this next section. It starts to break down. You start to see the rice beginning to intrude on the patterning quads as well. Very long jack as well on the third column. Gotta watch out for those little embellishment moments going into this outro that does not let up. You would think that it'd be a nice calm outro. No, you had that in the middle. We're full gas until the end here.
Oh my god, it even goes into speed here, and those patterns are not friendly at all. Like, you get some back and forth, some zigzags here and there, like going back and forth into 3 wide kind of back and forth sections. Those trails with those LNs are also kind of could be responsible of some drops here and there. We all saw Siger kind of falling prey to the last trails of Feeling Sky from the semifinals. Some other players could also fall prey to those in the end.
Yeah, the recency bias bringing that back into memory. But if you're able to withstand all of that, you get to this outro, no funny slowdowns from the looks of it this time around, so don't need to rely on any SV reading skills. But with that being said, that will do it for the Mappool's finals Mappool showcase. As a reminder, there are very few players left in this tournament, but it does bear reminding. And if you're in the losers bracket, you do have the conditional match to watch out for. So for the 4 of you that are in the losers bracket, please make sure to coordinate with your prospective opponents to ensure that all those matches can get played. If you are in the winners bracket, congratulations. for making it to one of the podium positions, I believe, mathematically. So, with that being said, I think we'll close things out for now. It has been a wild tournament so far. 2 more weekends left. The winner still left to be determined. Pat, do you have anything else left to add before we send you off to bed?
Stay woggin'.
Absolutely. So, until then, we'll catch you guys later.
Bye.
They've been talking about the way I do what I do.